Let's just acknowledge that we're here at Cafe Virtuoso in San Diego at, what's the address?
1616 National Avenue.
National Avenue, and Ed and I rode our bikes here, and we're just going to get a tour with Steve and Laurie, the principal owners in a team of about 5, and they're going to show us where the coffee comes to them and then what they do to it as we go through. So, yeah, take it away. Good.
Okay, very good. You can see here some bags of green coffee. This is what we purchase in preparation for roasting. This comes from all over the world. We use importers. We're not a big enough operation to be buying direct from the countries of origin. I think we talked about that earlier, where we'd need to buy 250 of these bags in a container at a time of one coffee in order to buy direct. So we use importers.
How much are you buying a month? How many of these bags come in a month?
We're going through about 7,000 pounds of coffee a month right now. We're straddling the small to medium roaster range. A lot of growth in the last year or so for us.
And so these beans have been, of course, grown and harvested and dried and
processed,
whether they're cooperatives or however they were sold, whether fair trade, organic, or whoever the intermediary was, and then an importer brought them to where you buy them. You buy them from the importer.
Right. They primarily store coffee in places like Oakland or Seattle, and then we have it shipped down on an as-needed basis. Yeah, just going backwards a little bit. For those people who don't know about coffee starts its life as a fruit, a coffee cherry. What we normally think of as a coffee bean is half of what's inside of one of those cherries. You'd have 2 of these beans facing each other inside of, unless you're talking about a pea berry, which basically these 2 beans are fused together to form a pea berry. So they don't differentiate themselves.
I've seen it growing that way in Chiapas, so I can picture very well what you're describing.
Yeah, so then depending on the country of origin or the farm, they process it a number of different ways, either a wet process or a natural process, kind of to give general differentiation to the basic types of processing, and then dried on patios. Yeah, so in this form here, it's around approximately 12% moisture content, and will stay pretty stable for a good year, sometimes 2 years, after which it starts to get a little bit of the flavor of the sacks that it's in.
So it can actually stay in a sack for almost a year?
Easily for a year, and often for a couple of years in a fairly stable state. However, one of the things that really helps with that is where it's stored, the humidity, temperature, and so forth. There's a lot of new developments now that are somewhat controversial, vacuum packing or Grain Pro, but the traditional way is in these old juke sacks that allow the coffee to breathe.
I love those sacks. I think they're beautiful sacks. I love seeing them from around the world.
Yeah, Steve actually designed the racks that the bags sit in with a friend of ours who's an architect, and they're really unique. No one else has anything like that. A lot of people will end up putting them in plastic tubs, sort of like garbage tubs, which doesn't allow the beans to breathe. And so he came up with an idea of how we could maneuver these beans around for easier use and easier to get at. And then they look nice too.
So each of these racks carries 1 bag. Obviously air is circulating all through them, and thanks for pointing that out to us. Other places, if they know what they're doing, should covet these racks, shouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, we'd probably resell them if there was any money in it, but there's not. So.
Okay. Where do we go next? What do you do with that?
Yeah, let's move to the roaster, where all the magic happens. Let's move to the roaster, where all the magic happens. We use a infrared style roaster called the Diedrich, made in Sandpoint, Idaho. And this particular roaster does use infrared heating panels. It has a few other little tricks up its sleeve on how it is able to produce a very consistent roast profile. And it's definitely a preferred roaster for, at least for the way that we like to roast. You're able to get a lot of, more subtle tones out of some of the more delicate coffees from around the world. And
I just want to reiterate here that my understanding is, Steve, that this is your passion, and that you understand these nuances very well, and you know a lot about bringing out those little specialties from each bean.
It's a never-ending learning curve, for sure.
An art.
And there's always, one of the things I loved about this is there's always more to learn. And yeah, roasting thousands of batches of coffee, tasting it, learning from what works and what doesn't. Yeah. What we actually have done here is working with the manufacturer. We've come up with a controller where we can develop our roast profiles and then save them. And they are specific to each coffee and to our style of roasting, so that we can help with consistency of the product that we give to our clientele. So part, I guess, a little harder on a podcast, but I'll try to paint a visual picture. In the top of the roaster, we've got this big hopper kind of funnel where we put the green coffee in. It goes down into the roaster itself. Inside of this main area is a big drum where the coffee is tumbled throughout the course of the roast, and then heat is added to the coffee, both through a combination of conduction through the heat of the drum itself and also through convection, airflow through the drum. After the coffee's done roasting, which is somewhere around 15 minutes plus or minus, it then comes out in this large cooling tray where air is drawn through the coffee and it's cooled down to room temperature. After it's cooled off, it goes through this device called a de-stoner or stoner, which removes rocks that are left over during the green processing, and they tend to hide out in there. Let's see if we have some left over from the last roasting cycle. Looks like we've already gotten rid of them, but there's invariably always a few stones left over, and those can do a real number on an expensive commercial grinder if you don't have some system of removing them. From here, we go back to our packaging machine where we select the amount of coffee that we want to be bagged, and then it's all hand packaged from there.
And the big circular cylinder there is what?
It's called an afterburner, and actually it's all about removing the smoke to meet environmental air quality standards. Our particular afterburner, we chose to spend a substantial amount more in order to remove the particulate matter at a much lower temperature. This afterburner, as compared to most that you would find out there, which are called thermal oxidizers, this one actually has a catalytic oxidizer in it, uses about a third the amount of gas per unit volume of what it cleans up. And it also puts out about a third the amount of carbon dioxide.
That's pretty consistent with your values as a business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, and that just leads us to say again how virtuous coffee, or Cafe Virtuoso, is, where you've gotten your name, and that this is the kind of business model that we really advocate for in Jubilee economics, or a One Earth economics that fits on one planet. And One Earth economics doesn't avoid importing some things. We recognize that trade is part of the exchanges of One Earth, but we want to do it ethically, we want to do it fairly, and then on this end, we want to be part of local and independent businesses that are socially conscious, such as the two of you are. So we want to say that again at this point. Is this your phase, Laurie?
I think I've sort of been put into this phase, I think. Yes, we, about a little over a year ago, we decided that we were ready to expand a little bit from just focusing on wholesale servicing restaurants. We were doing a good enough job at that time that we felt we could expand into opening a little cafe area in our roastery. And as you see, we have a coffee cart here. So it is portable, but it stays here most of the time unless, we've had certain events that we've taken at places. But we actually were hounded by our customers to open this place. We were very reluctant. And I was like, no, I can't do a coffee shop. And, the funniest part is I've ended up really enjoying it. It's a way to showcase our products. It's a way to do a better job really for our wholesale accounts. I can bring in a chef and we can pull a shot of espresso for them. We can develop drinks here and then share those with our customers, which we do all the time. We know all of the products that we distribute, not just our coffee and tea, but there's like syrups and frappe powders and chocolates and you name it that we really distribute out of here. So I think we do a better job all around. And it's been well received. The people that work in this area actually come here on foot almost every day and get drinks from us throughout the day and bagels and muffins and gluten-free bread and all of that. So that's kind of what we've been doing, and we have a nice little resale area to follow up with that. When someone wants to buy a bag, they have a cup of coffee and they love it, they can buy a bag of beans and take it home and brew it for themselves.
Show us one or two of the bags of beans that are maybe resourced by by a cooperative or some group, whether it's fair trade, organic, or whatever that comes to your mind or that you want to point out off the shelf here.
Well, we have so many varieties. I'd say we have about 20 different coffees and blends here, give or take. And, some of our more popular ones, we have a dark roast called Cove Blend. It's an Italian roast level. It is a darker, smokier, but it has a lot of flavor to back it up. So it's popular with a lot of people. And that is, of course, an organic fair trade coffee blend. So all three coffees are certified and that are in that blend. And then and we do something unique here. Steve didn't talk about this, but our blends are actually called blend after roasts. So each group of beans gets roasted individually at different roast levels, so different time and temperature to bring out the best of that particular bean. And then it's blended at the end with the other group's 2 or 3 beans. And then you get this really layered flavoring that's very unique. So that's one of them. We have some gorgeous single origins, Ethiopians that are probably my favorite. We've got some Kenyan, just fantastic, very vibrant. And then everything in between, Costa Rica, Central Americans and South Americans, and we have 2 different styles of espresso. We have a light roast espresso that's our house espresso. It's called Virtuoso espresso, and that's a really great sipping espresso, cappuccino, cortados, things like that. And then we have a darker one for people that want something that really stands up in a lot of milk.
You have something here from a women's alliance of coffee growers?
Well, yes. As I mentioned, my favorite coffees are the Ethiopians. We have this one called Amaro Gayo from the Women's Alliance Coffee. So it's certified as a Women's Alliance. What that means is that coffee was produced 100% by women. So it wasn't just their farm, but everything they've done, which to me, if you can have an Ethiopian, another one is an Indian that we have. So from countries like that, it's pretty fantastic that these women have this opportunity that they've taken advantage of. And interestingly enough, they are some of the best coffees.
Wonderful.
A lot of TLC goes in these coffees.
Great. Oh, and the Women's Alliance coffee from Costa Rica as well, it looks like.
Well, yeah, I left that one out. The Costa Rica Women's Alliance is very, very popular as well. I think there's just such a fascination with Costa Rica in general. There's, it's very much a go-to coffee because a lot of people have traveled there and fallen in love with the country, and it is a really nice coffee. So, yeah, a lot of choices, and we're happy to sample people, which is nice in the cafe. If we don't have something brewed, we can always do a single serving brewing for you so that you can taste the coffee you're interested in. There's no reason to buy a coffee just wondering if it's, you're going to like it. And we always back our coffees up. If you buy something ever that you don't love, you can bring it back right away, and we'll give you something that you do love.